Welcome back to the Sexy Business Podcast. I'm Spooky Dangerous. We're joined with Lewd Neko, and
Hello.
today we get to talk about my game, Shackles of Ellswyn. We've done a few kind of interviewee type episodes before, where we got to talk about Feud of Donwell, we got to talk about Shady Lewd Cut, and we also did kind of reviewy type episodes. I don't know if we would call it a review, but more of a conversational piece of Cyan Capsule's game, My Pig Princess. And I thought it would be kind of along the same line to actually just talk about the game that we have the dev here for every week, and we'll talk about Shackles of Ellswyn. So, Neko, you played the game on stream just recently. Let's walk us through a little bit how that went, and then we can kind of introduce Shackles a bit like that, like how the play was, kind of some of the things that you enjoyed about that.
Yeah, I've streamed Shackles twice. I did like my initial stream. I think this was back in like maybe December or so. And then I just recently streamed it again to look at some of the new content. I had done a couple of like Fuda games in the past. And all of the Fuda games that I upload as VODs to like various, sites, they get insane amounts of views compared to anything else I post. I think it's just because that category, because like Fuda stuff is like a special category on most like sites. Maybe that gives it more traction. But yeah, Shackles was a really big hit, and when I streamed it, I mean, I had this like popping off chat going too. Like people really like Fuda, and they really like femdom. So when you combine that together, and you have a girl reading it, like, it was a really fun experience. And I'm a big fan of the fantasy genre too, which Shackles falls under. So it was quite fun.
Yeah, I mean I love hearing that, but I also think it's funny that our podcast's best performing episode is Food of Domwell. So like in the same way, maybe all the food content that people are making right now, there's just such a thirst, such a hunger for it at the moment, which
Like
I think
good
is
Fuda
exciting.
dick.
Hell yeah, right? So yeah, I guess we kind of wanted to do an introduction of what is Shackles of Ellsworth and maybe like kind of how it started, um, and maybe lead into some of the how it came to be stuff. But Shackles of Ellsworth is a definitely a dominant futon focused game, but there is also like a big chastity kind of chastity cage focus as well because when I started this project, and there was a couple of us at the time, and I'm really the only person left now, but CubeZ had that was her entire niche. CubeZ, who has done like the most of the art and the character design at the beginning of the game, she kind of blew up on Twitter making dominant Fuda content, but mostly with comics. And people might be familiar with Black Contract, which is something that is a comic, and then we also made like an animated novel version of as well, which is the same kind of thing, except instead of Fuda, it is just Laura. Um, but like it's that same dominant woman, same chastity focused, and has kind of a magic part of the universe as well. And I kind of wanted to do the same thing. Some of this is inspired by Fuda Dom World, where the idea was to create a world where your role in society is very different, where what you're trying to do um, is based on your position in the world, right? Like main character falls out of nowhere, lands in this new place. He has nothing to start with. It's kind of like the worst isekai, really, because he's just bullied from there constantly. But then you're kind of presented with different choices as to which character you want to devote yourself to. It's kind of like a dating sim, except instead of pursuing a character and them falling in love with you, these women just want to own you, but they want you to do it willingly because if it's not willingly, how are you going to enthusiastically do any of the things that they want from you? And so we have three main characters. We've got the Queen, and you kind of can see the background, which is the Queen's bedroom, and a little portrait of herself up on the wall. Can't really show off these characters very much because it's got to be YouTube's there. But the queen has got like a big latex focus thing. And they're all elves, by the way, so she's got the big ears, huge
Yeah.
hourglass kind of figure as well. And she's very, I'd say icy, but like still expects you to like be obedient. Like she has an expectation of you of something that you are not yet, and then your journey as a character is like trying to fit more in line with that. And then the second character is the witch, who you meet in the intro. She's the one that spirits you away to this place. And she's much more affectionate and encouraging. And her entire goal is that she just wants to turn you into a woman. She's like, you just should be a cute girl instead. How have you not figured this out yet? This is obviously
Yes.
what you were supposed to be all along. And so she's trying to move you along this path of magical transformation. And her route is, I think, the most popular one because it's the one that everyone keeps asking for, and we've developed the most of because of this. So you do actually see the main character get transformed, and you can kind of pick how you're going to look and stuff like that. And then there's like still going to be a bunch more after that. Like it's not like, oh, happy ending, you're a woman now. You will have an opportunity to explore more of those things, but we didn't want to run too far down that plot line. We wanted to go on back and do other stuff because our third character, the muscle mommy Jane, is severely underdeveloped compared to the other two. So at the moment, we're focusing a bit on Jane and giving her a bit more content on what's going on. And she's the like muscly woodsman type, where her role in the universe is that she hunts down unattended males and brings them back to the kingdom so that you can't escape.
I like all of the pet play vibes in her route.
Yeah, so she has each character kind of has their own cornerstone, which is like in the same niche but not overlapping too much. And Jane definitely wants to have like her own pet and like a collar leash thing, and like that was kind of, and like a public humiliation kind of angle as well. That was what we had written out for her at the start. So yeah, at the beginning, right, CubeZone and I had this design document where we're like, okay, what are our three characters going to be? What's the setting going to be? And all this kind of stuff. And she kind of came up with the main visual aesthetic for each of the characters, and we talked a lot about how different people are supposed to be there, like why, how this all kind of works together. Because she wanted to do a fantasy theme. And then we looked at a bunch of different stuff. It's like, okay, who's going to have what thing in particular? And we were just trying to hit all of the notes from what CubeZay had success with on Twitter and like making comics and stuff like that. So it was like we had to hit latex, we had to hit chastity, and like boot worship, and everyone had to be Fuda, and elves. Apparently, everyone had to be an elf and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So we were trying to like tick all these boxes and stuff as we went through. Which I think it started out really well, right? And the game's been running for over 2 years now, and a lot, a lot has happened since then. So I think might as well do, I don't know, like a chronology is probably not good enough, but like kind of maybe a few steps as to some of the struggles that we went through to get to where we are now. But basically, in that entire time, 2.5 years, whatever it is, we've missed exactly 1 month's update. Only one, and that was because CubeZay said that she would be doing something for it, and then just never actually replied to me for 6 months. And after the first month of no update, which was in December, and we were like, oh, whatever, December is a hard month to do anything, blah, 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 it's fine. The next month for the January, I had already picked up a different artist to try and do some stuff. And the plan was to have a second artist to do supplementary stuff, to take the load off CubeZay so that it wasn't so much work, or like so much relying on her to do so many things, and they could do small parts, or like we had a lot of full page scenes, but a lot of small panels as well. So even if having someone come on and do the small panels or something would take some of the load off. But obviously it wasn't working out because we haven't seen CubeZay for some time. And so we had a different artist come on, who I really like. I really like their art style, but a lot of the fans complained a lot, and some of it obviously is like this is not Cubes anymore, and some of it was we
Yeah.
genuinely don't like the new artist, and it's hard to like differentiate between the two, right? But a lot of people complained, and then I ended up finding a new third artist who was a lot closer to Cubes' original style, but not as skilled. Um, and what was kind of funny to me was I had an interaction recently where someone posted a thing, and they were like, "Wow, the latest artist that you've gotten is Cubes back. Like this person is really good. What's going on?" I'm like, "No, it's still the same guy that we've had for the last year or whatever. He's just gotten better. It's just improved over time."
Good for him.
So we're definitely like kind of back to where we were at the start. We've had an awkward dark period where we're kind of scrambling to get everything back together, and we didn't want to really miss any updates because like Patreon is kind of brutal if you're not uploading and doing stuff. And how these studios like FTW that upload every couple of months and have like nothing in between are able to do it is crazy to me because we upload 3 different games every month and we have insane up and down drop off and churning and all this kind of stuff that stresses me out constantly. Um, but yeah, I think we've gotten back to a point where I'm really happy with how it is and how everything's going, and we're working on and developing and stuff like that. And the way that things with Cubes is going is that she's committed to working on another project because she wants to solo develop a game, and I've seen some of it and it looks really cool. But she's like, I want to finish this before I come back and work on anything else. I'm like, that's fine. And then we might see something like a Black Contract 2, or we might see her come back and just do small pieces for Shackles or whatever. Because obviously we've got budget for that. If she comes back, I'm going to say how high, and see what's going on and what kind of stuff we can add to THM once again.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of contracts, I think that brings up sort of one of the differences between, like, a company that's making a visual novel versus indie developers who are typically not actually working with like contracts. You're not like, hey, I'm going to contract you to work for me for 2 years and to do this art, or else I will sue you. It's like, I'm going to pay you slowly to get a couple of pieces of art over time.
Yeah, everything's kind of commission, right?
Yeah, most people I would say. So I think for most indie developers, I know either they do the art themselves. I know a lot of people who just do that. And then otherwise, it's either you got to have like a really close friend who like you can kind of trust to be like, you're gonna stay on this project with me, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to commission someone and hope that they don't get busy, they don't decide to stop doing art, they don't decide to stop just doing your game in particular, they don't decide to, you know, fuck off and like run away with your characters or run away with your art or
Yeah.
anything like that. So
For the most part, I haven't really had any troubles because what normally happens is you
yeah.
go, "Hello, I wish to commission you 2 to 3 pieces every month for the infinite foreseeable future," and every single artist is like, "Wow, a steady job. I love you. Let's go." Uh-huh. And so yeah, it is kind of tough because CubeSay was like there at the very beginning. We were kind of doing everything 50-50 amongst everyone. And it can be tough, and it's a demanding thing. We had so much art coming out at the beginning because the game's just starting, and we want to have stuff for people to like be able to play through and see straight away. Because it started off very very small, and people obviously complaining about how small it is, but it's like a big art game. I do actually want to talk about that as well because Shackles is very different from our other 2 games in format, and it's very different from regular visual novel game design things because Shackles does not have an expression panel for any of the characters. No one speaks in dialogue, and it goes, "Here is the main character's shocked face." Sometimes there's dialogue and they're just standing around on the screen, but they don't actually have expressions and react to stuff. Because what we wanted to do was just to have, here is a fully illustrated scene and all of the relevant parts of that fully illustrated scene every single time, and every month's update is just a block of fully illustrated scenes. So the game doesn't have any padding to it, so it feels short because it isn't bloated with dialogue and reused assets. Pretty much everything is used exactly one time. and then you're like, okay, this is this scene. This is probably the only time you're going to encounter and see this, because it's this whole full thing of exactly this one piece or this one thing happening to the main character or whatever. And because I wanted it to be so much more immersive than that, but the problem is it does mean the game is going to be shorter because there's no bloat in it, and it does mean that getting art done is more complicated, and there's a lot more going on. There's like a scene with the queen at the very beginning where she locks the main character in a chastity cage, and it's like 9 full image illustrated pieces and like 4 small panels that like focus on specific pieces within that. Just to have this one scene, which could have been like 3 lines of dialogue and no images, and people would have understood what's going on. So it is kind of hard to balance against expectations against the stuff that exists already, and do something unique and different. I feel like Cufflinks and Cages has the same problem. It's trying to do something very unique and different, and until it really finds its footing, it's going to be hard to convince everyone that that's working well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know The Price of Flesh, and I think Gato Bob's upcoming visual novel that's going to be a reworking of one of her previous ones is trying to do a similar thing with the like art style, and I think hers is going to still have sprites, but it's going to have a lot of scenes where it's more of like like a moving CG almost, like
Mm,
really illustrating the action. And I mean, even for her most recent game, The Price of Flesh, it's like $15 on Steam, and I think it has about like I think I finished it in like 8 to 10 hours. And so some people will complain about that. They're like, oh, it should be longer, whatever. But it has so much art. It has like I think well over 100 or 200 pieces of art, and she did all of the art, all of the writing, all of the coding herself. So I know we've like talked this to death, but there is such a lack of appreciation for the time and effort and dedication that takes to go into writing or art, any of these things that sort of produce like a product. And I think it has to do a lot with how, like, we're in this society where people want that instant gratification, where they want new art every single day. And, it has to be perfect and has to be what I want. So, only getting a couple of pieces of art a month for some people seems unreasonable because they don't
yeah.
consider like someone had to make that latex look really shiny, and that's a hard skill to do sometimes, or they had to make that POV shot look correct, which like some of the POVs in this game are like difficult to pull off, especially POVs where like you're looking up at like a
Yeah.
character is like if you draw it badly it's going to look super wonky and it's going to immediately take you out and you're going to be like this looks goofy and I'm no longer in this like sexy subby mode. But when you do pull it off, it does create that feeling of like, oh, I feel like I'm actually kneeling and submitting to this character.
Yeah, because we've got about 30 months worth of work into this game, and the average Steam gameplay time is 1 hour 12 minutes or so. But that's
Right.
like so much time for so little at the end, right? And if people are playing this expecting 8 to 10 hours or something, it's going to take us a while to get there. And when it's not all writing and stuff like that, it's going to be a lot harder for us to get there. But the idea is to have like a much more punchy, impactful experience. Whereas Sleeve Shock, our second game, is much more um, written because there's a lot more in the plot about stuff that you're not supposed to be looking at. Like there's a lot of plot about the corporation, and things that have happened to you that like aren't necessarily need to be shown or whatever. And like people talking about how they're feeling and what's going on and stuff like that a lot, um, and why they're angry with you and all this kind of stuff. Um, and I think the talking in that game is really important. In Shackles, the doing of the game is really important. Like the things that is forced upon the main character is really important, and the actual physical changing journey of the main character, especially in the Witcher's realm, like you actually visually see the character change over time and like and what's going to happen to them and stuff like that. Is the game. It is what makes Shackles different to most things. Because it is much more punchier. And then like the black contracting that we did is even punchier again, right? Like it's 8 minutes end to end or something ridiculous, according to somebody ripped and uploaded a video of it, where you basically just sit there and just listen to all of the the voice acting for each line delivered, and you just click through all of the things like pretty quickly or whatever, and then like that's it, right? The whole experience,
Mm.
but it's again super impactful and punchy, like the same as reading a comic, but it's more immersive. So it's hard. Everyone's gonna have played something one time and enjoyed it, and then expect that from you. Like somebody's gonna have played Fallout New Vegas and go, "Man, why isn't this game just like that?" And it's like, well, I'm not that talented. The thing that I do good is I ask people for help and make the pretty art for me, and and that kind of stuff. Um, if if Patreon blows up and we're getting millions and billions of dollars, I'll be able to spend millions and billions of dollars on making the games. Pretty much everything in the company is just about keeping the projects running and keeping the games updating every single month. So being able to have more to work with means that we could do some, like I could hire someone to come and do coding instead of me and have a more intricate engine or an actual 3D game or something like that. But it's hard to do that when we don't have those resources handy.
Yeah, and I like talking about like, like people like, judging it sort of by the like sheer amount of time it might take to like skim through a visual novel or whatnot. Um Something that like I've noticed as like a sex worker is just the absolute difference in reception from like people who are used to buying porn from like real life models, OnlyFans, Pornhub, things like that, versus people who buy like hentai, erotic games, things like that. Because like I've seen plenty of like 10-minute clips on like various sites, and they're like $15 or $20 for a 10-minute clip of a cosplay girl doing whatever or a
Or
certain
less
kink or
even.
whatnot.
I've seen stuff that's much
Yeah,
less. And
yeah,
then like you can
absolutely,
also
like.
compare to like JAV, which is kind of always 2 hours.
Mhm. Yeah, and you can get some of those for like $30, which is like for like a lot of people would like balk at that and be like, that's too much to pay. But it's like it's 2 hours of like somebody doing a lot of lewd stuff. And I will say those longer JAVs oftentimes do actually have some pretty interesting like production value.
Yeah,
I've seen some pretty crazy ones. But like, in those sorts of circles, like people are okay paying with that because they understand like, oh, I'm supporting this creator, like the site is gonna take a cut. They have to pay taxes on this. Like, if anything, they're kind of giving it for a pretty low rate. You're paying for the experience of that particular person. And on the other hand, you look at like art and things like that, where people are like so much more sort of stingy about it, or so much more picky about like, oh, this is only a hour-long visual novel and I paid $5 and that's like too much,
yeah,
or like whatnot. I've seen like some pretty ridiculous complaints about pricing, even for like a $5 visual novel that like will offer a lot of content. People will still find a way to complain. Or they'll be like, oh, there wasn't enough choices or there was too much reading. Which
yeah.
is like
My
one
gripe
of the
with
most
that, right,
bizarre ones.
is they go, I paid $5 for the 1 hour visual novel or whatever. They play it all the way to the end, and they go, this game has 15 minutes worth of content in it. Gameplay time at time of review 1.2 hours, and I'm like, first of all, that doesn't make any sense. Second of all, if you played the game end to end one time and the game is short, then perhaps the game is wide in its development and you're supposed to try out all the other different routes and try all that kind of different stuff. In Shackles, we've got 3 different main routes, and I wonder a lot if people just played one of them, got to the screen that's like, hey, this is the end at the moment, try again, and didn't, and they're like, "Oh, that's the end of the game." I'm like, "Did you look and try anything else? Did you try and discover any of the secrets in the game? Any of the other characters or other routes or whatever?" And also, why did you say it's 15 minutes when it clearly says you've played for an hour? And then there's always that thing of like, you'll come back months later. Because we talked about My Pig Princess, right? And when
Hmm.
I jumped on the Patreon, I got my copy of it and I played through it. I just did like an end to end because that one is pretty linear, um, and then put it down. And then we came back to talk about it for the show, and then I replayed it, and it was like, this is pretty much the same as playing it for the first time. Like all of the scenes are still exciting and pretty impactful. Like I'm still impressed by the art now as I was then. Everything still feels new and exciting, you know. And so there's nothing to stop you from going back and trying something later. If you buy something on Steam, it's on your account for your entire life. So
Yeah.
you're also committing to buying the next 100 million updates as well. Like, I just think that, yeah, the instant gratification culture is really strange to me because it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It's like, oh, I've bought a share in a company, and I've just not made $1 million from investing in the stock market. And it's like, that's not how that works. Lottery tickets don't even work like that. Like, unless if you bought exactly one lottery ticket and won exactly that one time and never purchased one ever again, of which the odds is kind of ridiculous, then you would, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like, you're never going to actually get something instant out of that, and you commit to it. And then if you want, you can come and join the community and talk to us and be like, look, I wish there was more of this, or I wish that this happened, or I wish that there was this thing. We had a guy that was like, man, I really love hoop earrings, and I wish there was more hoop earrings in the game. And I was like, I feel you, brother. I'm going to work on that. And then we've got something coming soon, which has got hoop earrings. And I'm like, look, it's been in the
Yay.
pipeline for a long time, but it's finally happening. Um, so I think about a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like, yes, this is something we can do, or maybe this might take a lot of time, or, this is something that people want, or I ask people all the time if they want feed content in the games, and I always get mixed responses. Someone's like, well, I don't know. But if all of a
Or like,
sudden people joined and they were campaigning and cheering and hooting for it, then I'm like, all right, sick, this sounds great. Like, we're only in the niches that we're in because this is what people were really responding to at the start because they came from CubeSate's audience.
the other thing I was thinking about is like you're the consumer. Like you should kind of set your expectations differently if it's an early access demo, like whatever you want to call it, green light, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it's like people complain, they're like, this isn't a full game. And it's like, yeah, it's not.
It's on the
And
tin.
that's why it's in early access right now. And if you're not okay with that, that's fine. Like as a consumer, I don't buy a ton of early access games because for me, I like being able to experience a game all at once. It's like it's mostly just how my brain works focus wise. Like I will lose interest in something like really quickly. And so I like being able to be like, okay, this game is completed. I can focus on it for the next couple of weeks and then never see it again.
Yeah, I don't want to feel
Um,
like I've beaten something or I've completed something that's not
mm,
complete. So I
yeah.
also understand.
And so like, if I see a game where I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool concept, but like it's in early access and it's $10 right now. I'm going to just wait until it's fully released." And the risk I might be taking is the price might go up between now and then. Lots like I know Third Crisis just released an announcement that they are increasing their price now that the game is fully released. They're going to be
Hmm.
increasing it next month, which makes sense because there is so much more content in it now than when it first went into early access. There is literally like 30 something, 50 something plus hours. Like there's a bunch of content. Um, and you can put it on your wish list. You can keep an eye on it. You can follow the development on like Twitter and like look at like promotional material and see if that ends up interesting you more. You can wait a couple more months until it's later into development. But it seems like just very silly of me to buy a game where like you see that it's early access, you see that it's very early in development, and then to
And then
complain and be
complain
like, this
about
game
it.
is bad.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that whenever I look at an early access game, people go, this is buggy, or I had issues with this. Like, I think it's called Dungeon Tavern. And then I played it for 5 minutes and the game crashed, and then I didn't open it again. But I was interested to wait and come back when it actually does work. And other people had like the same kind of problems in the comments and stuff like that, right? We didn't really have as much issues with that because VN's a lot more simple. But it's like the thing that usually turns me off is that it might not work, and I'll bump off a product because it's not because it's incomplete, but because I'm not going to be able to feel like I can actually play it without it interrupting me,
Mm.
which is also understandable. Again, we don't really have that problem um, as much. Sometimes we'll have routing issues. There's been a few times where I've released an update and I've had to immediately release a patch because an 8 was supposed to be a 9, and when you click on the menu button, it warps you to the wrong point of the story and makes it non-progressible and infinitely loopable within one. I don't know if you can tell, but this is a specific example. Um, but like I fix that stuff straight away so that you can actually get to the content. Uh, but game dev stuff is hard, and I have not refunded Dungeon Tavern, right? I'm just gonna wait, and I'll come back to it later. And kind of like what you said, right? If you come and look at something and you go, oh, it's early access, maybe this is not for me or whatever, you can always just add it to your wish list. This does actually help the team because it helps them get visibility, and you're going to get notified later when it comes on the full release, but also when there's other stuff that happens that's relevant. And also, you can just go and have a look at the devlogs. I supported Subverse. Well, sorry, I just bought it. I wasn't on the newsletter. I just bought it later. I went and played through it once, and then was like, okay, I am now just going to every month go and look at what the new devlog update is to see if the content is enough for me to want to come and play through the game from where I had left off. And most of the time, the answer is no, because they're like, oh, we've added 3 more scenes or whatever, and like the actual story hasn't started progressing yet or whatever. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll just wait, but it's still going to be on my Steam count forever. I am not in a hurry for it to show up. When it's there, I'll be excited about it, and then I'll go and play it. So you played it on stream recently, and then I asked you about that before, and you said that you struggled to get the new scene with the Queen update. And I'm curious about your routing about this because I have a hunch as to what the problem is. But do you want to kind of walk me through what you did?
I know I was trying to go for like a lot of the like yellow choices because I was like, I figured it was one of the scenes that like happened like after like you've done the whole commitment to her and stuff like that. I think that's what I was mostly like doing. I changed like a couple of things. Occasionally going like sometimes I kept getting rerouted to like the witches scenes a lot, and then it would just end. So it was possibly just like I wasn't making the right sequence of like yellow to red to yellow is maybe what was going on. Also, like I was just getting a little bit flustered because, like, when you're live streaming, you don't want dead air of clicking through
Yeah,
choices and reloading because not the most fun thing to watch.
I feel that. Yeah, as you said that to me, I had a hunch that was the problem because the witch and the queen route are really interlaced because the
Mm.
witch is doing what she's doing for the queen, and you have to like meet the queen just like generally as like a cool, you have permission to exist, kind of a thing. But to actually get to that specific scene where they're like in the bay sitting on the dock and stuff like that, is after the witch transforms you. So it's like after the conclusion of that arc of the witch, then
Yeah.
in the witch route you will go and talk to the queen about this stuff, and then she takes you, and then you go and do that.
Okay. Yeah, because I
Um,
remember I saw the transformation scene, but I must have gone just like fully on the witch's path with like the next choices
yeah,
I
okay.
made.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be those two rounds are either going to the queen will like split off and do her own thing, but currently they both bottleneck at the transformation scene, and it's going to
Okay.
split out again where either you go and have that queen scene or you go on and have that witch scene. And it was funny because as soon as you kind of type through that, I was like, oh, I wonder if it's because of like the way that the routing goes because you do kind of just click yes, I want to see the queen all the time, but the queen's one is much less linear. The witch's one is a lot more so, and now Jane's content is also a lot more linear as well. Um, but yeah, you also mentioned that you did have some audio issues. This is a thing that's really tough for us to work on in development. Like we have got some sporadic voice acting here and there. None of Jane's lines are voice acted because I reached out to like my dream scenario voice actress, and she wasn't keen. And I've just not
Aw.
really found someone uh, that I think is a good replacement yet, and so I kind of left it. Um, but it is hard, right? Because as we're doing stuff in development, I am always feeling like I have to make new art content scenes. And when I'm making new art content scenes, it's hard to. Basically, the order is the art is made, it's put into the game, and then all of the dialogue and story and stuff is written from that. But I have kind of like blocks and ideas of what these things are supposed to be in advance. But all the writing and building into the game is done last, which means that to get voice acting for new scenes as they come out, that has to be done after all of these things are finished, of which there is no time left in the month between the art getting completed, everything else getting done, and then the voice acting getting recorded. So in theory, we could have like, here is the VA from last month's update every month, but that still doesn't quite work as well. So what we trying to do for a little while was get some voice acting done for like what was supposed to be an impactful scene, and like try and elevate a scene that way, by adding stuff to it. But because it's again so sporadic and it's kind of all over the place, um, and it's not the focus because we're focusing on getting the new content in, that eventually what's going to happen is I'm going to go back and do all of the audio at once and like
Mm.
fix everything, and it's going to be like more towards the end of the project where I can like universally make things like have kind of the same way that a problem is solved, or a more consistent style in which the dialogue is delivered and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like a yeah, maybe here's some stuff, and if people hate it, I'll remove it, or if people really love it, then maybe I'll do more of that. But then we'll kind of just focus on the new, because everyone kind of is excited about the new thing. I even did a poll where it was like, would you be okay if we had just a whole month's update which was just voice acting? And we
Mm.
got more yes votes than no votes, but we got enough no votes for me to be like, I don't know that I can do it
Yeah.
actually. So it
And
is
like
tough.
to be fair, like a lot of English indie visual novels, like in general, don't have voice acting because it's such a monumental task to
Yeah.
hire voice actresses and actors, to find ones that have the right kinds of setup. Because a lot of, the English voice actors are going to be independent, to have
Mm.
the right voice to make sure they can commit for that project. Can you actually pay them their rates, especially for like lengthy visual novels with a lot of dialogue? You ever wonder why visual novels are partially voice acted? It's because they wrote way too much and they cannot pay someone to read all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
8,000 lines of voice dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a shock to me when a game has, like an English visual novel has any form of voice acting. Like I was blown away. This isn't an NSFW visual novel, but Slay the Princess is fully voice acted, every
Mm.
line. Absolutely insane feat for a visual novel to accomplish, especially for it to be really well done voice acting. And then the other problem is, there was one visual novel during the Hentai Live demonstration that did have English voice acting, and as I was listening to the trailer, I could hear the difference in audio quality between voice actors, that they had
Mm.
different setups. Like I could hear white noise in the background for some of them. And maybe most people wouldn't notice that, but for like someone like me who's played a lot of visual novels and who really like is a bit of an audiophile, it immediately heard that and I was like, "Oh, I wouldn't be able to listen to this."
But
So,
you can tidy
it's
that
a
up before it goes into the thing. Um,
yeah, because it shows a sort of lack of like finesse or like understanding of like
yeah.
audio. Like it was sort of just like taken. I don't know. It sounds like they took the raw audio and just sort of slapped it in without editing it. And so it's high risk, high reward. Because the other thing is like making sure you have a voice actress that people enjoy. Especially
Yeah.
for NSFW. If someone has a voice that someone doesn't find sexy, that can be a major turnoff. And of course, you can always put settings to disable certain characters' voices. This is something that a lot of Japanese visual novels do that I really like.
Mm.
So if you absolutely hated a character's voice, or if they were like too loud or too soft, you can actually adjust oftentimes those volumes individually. Because having the wrong voice actress can be a turnoff, and it can just sort of ruin the whole experience if you're really trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel that. There's a lot of whiny kid characters that I'd love to remove. Or people, and in just video games in general, people that have the same voice line way too many times in a row.
Oh,
That could also go. Um,
yeah.
but we're at the end of our time. We have gone a little bit over, and I swear to God, we don't play favorites here on the Sexy Business Podcast. But we wanted to talk a little bit about this game today because I don't know. I think I'm really excited about the development of it. Still this far in, right? Still got some cool stuff coming up ahead. The latest update is opening us to a new region, and I'm excited for us to get to explore that and show off some of that. But I did kind of want to talk about what we had gotten through to, kind of get to hear and what it is like being a dev in the space, and that's kind of what the Sexy Business Podcast is about. What it's like being a creator, being someone that is working in the sexy business, to get a idea of what is kind of happening, what's going on, and some of the stuff that you have to overcome to keep it running with the lights on for this long. But that is going to be it from us this episode. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments, because always I'm there, I'm checking them out, I'm having a look, and I'm happy to answer stuff about what people are going to have, what kind of curiosities you have about our games, what's going on. If you have recommendations for stuff that you want us to check out for the future, let us know, because we are going to be looking at more games. It is very easy for both of us to play something and then come through and talk a little bit about it on here. Or if you have any guests that you would love to come on, like I would love to get some voice actresses to come on, and we can have a chat with them about the space and what's going on and stuff like that. So if you have a favorite voice actress, definitely leave a Twitter tag in the comments as well, because I'd love to go and have a look at them, especially if they're a good fit for Jane from Shackles of Ellswyn.
Where are the mommy dummies?
Right? Exactly. But don't forget, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We've hit 100 subscribers just recently, and I'm very happy with how the show is going. So definitely click those numbers, because they make us very happy. And like I said previously, you want to make happy cats, right? We need to have happy Neko when you click all the buttons, instead of sad Neko when you click away on the recommended tab without liking, subscribing, and commenting.
Don't do that. I'll cry.
You have to click the happy buttons. And hopefully we will see you next week on the Sexy Business Podcast.
Bye-bye.